For centuries, they've been cast as the quintessential villains of the Bible, the brutes and bullies of the ancient world, the people who gave us Goliath, the giant who taunted an entire army, and Delilah, the woman who betrayed Israel's strongest hero. They are the Philistines. Their very name has become a modern-day insult for someone uncultured and crude. But who were these people, really? The Bible describes them as foreigners, invaders from across the sea, a people fundamentally different from the Israelites and their neighbors. For most of history, however, this was a claim shrouded in mystery without definitive proof. They were an enigma, until now. For the first time, scientists have sequenced the DNA from a 3,000-year-old Philistine cemetery. And what they found inside those ancient bones doesn't just confirm their foreign origins. It points to a surprising European connection that rewrites a key chapter of ancient history. A secret buried for millennia has finally been unearthed. And while this discovery proves where the Philistines came from, it also deepens the mystery of how their unique genetic signature seemed to vanish over time. To understand the Philistines, we almost always start with the familiar stories. We picture David, a young shepherd, facing the towering champion Goliath. The biblical narrative paints a clear picture. The Philistines are the other, the uncircumcised, the sworn enemies of Israel who settled along the coastal plain of modern-day Israel and Gaza. For much of the Iron Age, they were a dominant power in the region, locked in a centuries-long struggle with the fledgling Israelite kingdoms. They established a powerful confederation of 5 great city-states: Ashkelon, Ashdod, Ekron, Gath, and Gaza. From these coastal strongholds, they projected their power inland, frequently clashing with the Israelites. The stories are legendary. They captured the Ark of the Covenant in battle, a catastrophic blow to Israel's morale. They were the looming threat that ultimately led the Israelite tribes to unite under a single king, Saul, who would later die in battle against them. But beyond these biblical accounts, who were they? The texts refer to them as coming from Caphtor, a Bronze Age name widely believed to refer to the island of Crete. But was this a literal signpost or just a vague term for somewhere else? For decades, this was one of history's most fiercely debated questions. Were the Philistines just another local Canaanite tribe? Or were they truly foreigners who had migrated from a distant land? The answer, it turns out, was waiting not in ancient texts, but in the ground itself. Long before genetic testing, archaeologists had clues that the Philistines were different. The first hints came not from Israel, but from Egypt. Carved into the walls of Pharaoh Ramesses, the Third's temple at Medinet Habu, are dramatic reliefs from the 12th century BCE. They show a great invasion by a mysterious coalition of seafaring tribes the Egyptians called the Sea Peoples. The carvings depict Egyptian soldiers locked in combat with invaders in distinctive feathered headdresses. One of these groups is named the Peliset, a name that scholars have long linked to the biblical Philistines. This historical account was powerfully supported by archaeology. In the ruins of Philistine cities, archaeologists began finding things that just didn't belong. The most telling was the pottery. Around 1200 BCE, a new style appears abruptly in the region. Known as Philistine bichrome ware, it was decorated with black and red paints, often featuring geometric patterns, fish, and birds. Its style was a world away from the local Canaanite pottery, with striking parallels to styles from the Aegean world, ancient Greece, Crete, and the surrounding islands. Their architecture featured central hearths, more common in Aegean homes. Their diet was different too. Archaeologists found a surprising number of pig bones, a stark contrast to their Israelite neighbors. They even used a non-Semitic writing system with Aegean roots. All these clues pointed west, across the Mediterranean. Historians were almost certain the Philistines were outsiders, but the evidence was circumstantial. They couldn't prove it. To do that, they needed to find the Philistines themselves. For decades, one crucial piece of the puzzle remained missing: the Philistine dead. While archaeologists had excavated their cities and temples, they had never found a major cemetery. It was a frustrating mystery. Without their bones, scientists could never read the story written in their DNA. That all changed in 2013. After 30 years of excavation at the ancient port city of Ashkelon, one of the 5 great Philistine capitals, a team made a historic discovery. Just outside the city walls, they found what they had been searching for: the first ever Philistine cemetery, holding the remains of over 200 people. The discovery was kept secret for 3 years to allow the team to work meticulously. The burials themselves were revealing. Unlike their neighbors, the Philistines buried their dead in individual pits, sometimes with personal items like jewelry or small jugs of perfume. It was a direct look at how the Philistines cared for their dead, a cultural fingerprint distinct from everyone around them. But the most important discovery was biological. At last, scientists had access to Philistine human remains. An international team, led by scientists from the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Human History, began the painstaking process of extracting ancient DNA. The hot climate makes DNA preservation notoriously difficult, but using state-of-the-art technology, they focused on the densest parts of the skeleton, like the inner ear bone, where DNA is most likely to survive. They successfully sequenced genomes from 10 individuals, creating a genetic timeline of the city's inhabitants. The stage was set to finally answer the question, where did the Philistines come from? The results, published in the journal Science Advances in 2019, were a bombshell. The team compared the DNA of the pre-Philistine population of Ashkelon with the DNA of infants buried in the early Iron Age, right after the Philistines were thought to have arrived. The results were undeniable. The early Iron Age infants carried a sudden and significant influx of new ancestry. This genetic signature wasn't from the Levant. It wasn't from Egypt, it was from Europe. The analysis revealed that these infants had, on average, around 14% of their DNA derived from a population linked to southern Europe. The most plausible models pointed towards Greece, Crete, or Sardinia as the origin. This was the smoking gun. It was direct biological proof that the Philistines were migrants who arrived around the 12th century BCE. The biblical tradition, the Egyptian records, and the archaeological clues were all correct. The Philistines weren't a local tribe that simply adopted foreign habits. They were a people who had journeyed across the sea, bringing their genes and customs with them. This discovery transforms the Philistines from one-dimensional biblical villains into a people with a rich, complex, and now proven migratory history. They were part of a widespread disruption at the end of the Bronze Age, a time when civilizations across the Mediterranean collapsed and entire populations were set in motion. The Philistines weren't just invaders, they were survivors and pioneers, forging a new home in a new land. But the DNA results revealed another, equally fascinating chapter. The geneticists didn't just test the earliest arrivals, they also analyzed the DNA of individuals buried in the Ashkelon cemetery a few centuries later. What they found was startling. Within just 200 years, that distinct European genetic signature had all but vanished. The later Iron Age Philistines were genetically almost indistinguishable from the local Levantine population. The foreign DNA had been diluted to statistically insignificant levels, absorbed into the local gene pool. How did this happen? The answer is simple and profoundly human. Intermarriage. The DNA shows that from the very beginning, the Philistine migrants began mixing with the local populations. Generation by generation, the European genetic signal faded, even as Philistine culture remained vibrant and distinct. And this creates the final, lingering mystery. For over 500 years, until their conquest by the Babylonians in 604 BCE, the Philistines were consistently identified by their neighbors as a separate and unique people. Their distinctive pottery, architecture, and names continued for centuries. They maintained a unique cultural identity long after their unique genetic identity had been absorbed. So how did their culture persist long after their DNA had blended in? This question challenges our modern assumptions about identity. It shows that in the ancient world, who you were was defined less by your bloodline and more by the culture you practiced and the community you belonged to. The Philistines arrived as foreigners, but they adapted, integrated, and created a hybrid culture that was uniquely their own, a culture so strong that it outlasted their foreign genes. What do you think this discovery means for our understanding of ancient history? Does it change how you view the stories in the Bible? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy unraveling the mysteries of the past, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss our next exploration. The story of the Philistines was never really forbidden, just buried deep in the earth. By sequencing their genetic code, we've finally come face to face with the people themselves. They weren't just the enemies of ancient Israel. They were a people from the Aegean who sailed across the sea, built a powerful civilization, and left an indelible mark on history. Their journey reminds us that identity is never static, and that history, like our own DNA, is a story of constant mixing, movement, and change.